Return of the Mount Hua Sect. Chapter 280. I am the one who will become the sect leader of Mount Hua. Sir? Jinsung, who wanted to voice his surrender, glanced back. On the podium, where the sect leaders were seated, Hodo Jinyan, the sect leader of the Wudang sect, was looking at him with cold eyes. He knew he wouldn't win. However, as a disciple of Wudang, he couldn't just surrender in front of so many people. Of course, he might consider it wise, but the people watching wouldn't. In the end, Jinsung closed his eyes and aimed his sword at Chongmyung. I'll learn a few things. Learn? Yes. You're a funny one. Chongmyung rolled his eyes. If you want to learn, go to your teachers. Who would say they would learn from their opponent, someone who is from another sect? No, it isn't like that. Fine, I'll teach you. Chongmyung licked his lips. Instead, learning comes with a price. If you can survive today's spar, it'll be an amazing experience. That is, if you can. Jinsung smiled brightly, looking at Chongmyung's shining eyes. No, how did such a man appear on the side of the orthodox? Even the heavens were ignoring this. How could they give such power to this person? With tears, Jinsung grabbed his sword. After taking a deep breath, he aimed his sword at Chongmyung with determined eyes. You want to try and end it? I know I'm not your opponent. But Jinsung continued to speak while trembling. I cannot only fight with opponents who I have a chance of winning against. Since I won't die, I'll do my best to fight. Chongmyung smiled. How laughable. Sometimes such people would come. It was the same in the past war with the demonic sect. Those who would argue with their mouths would insist that they wouldn't back down. They weren't ones with amazing skills, but they still went to war with their loud mouths. But even though they were terrified and trembling, not once did they back down, and they did whatever they could. I guess Wudang is Wudang. There were people like this. Chongmyung smiled. Hey! What did you say your name was? Jinsung. Jinsung. Right, Jinsung. I'll remember it. Chongmyung slightly tilted his sword. Then let's get started. Chongmyung rushed towards Jinsung without delay, and the guy's eyes widened like a burning candle. He screamed with his mouth, but the sword in his hand followed the technique of Wudang without shaking. A sharp and clean sword technique. Your legs! Swish! However, the sword of Chongmyung passed through the sword technique of Jinsung and struck Jinsung in the knee. Jinsung reflexively used the sword to aim for Chongmyung's neck. Waist! Tuck! Jinsung, who was hit in the side, clenched his teeth. If it had been a real battle, his leg would have been cut off from the side. But this was just a spar, and the fight would happen until the opponent fell. Ha! Jinsung let out a loud shout and shook his sword. A brilliant sword technique of Wudang, called clear flowing water, began to unfold gracefully. Shoulder, wrist, index finger. Tuck, tuck, tuck. The sword of Chongmyung kept hitting him in succession. Gug! The sword technique he tried to unfold was stopped, and the sword flew into the air. Jinsung looked at Chongmyung with puzzled eyes. How did this... The head! Dud. Chongmyung brought his sword, still within its sheath, to his opponent's head before pulling it back. When it comes to swordsmanship, everything starts with the lower body and shoulders. Wudang or not, the head should realize this. Learn it. It was unclear if Jinsung, who had already fallen down, could hear this, but not caring, Chongmyung turned around. Explosive applause poured in for him, and Chongmyung smiled as he waved. The best! Manhua's divine dragon! One hit this time too! How can a disciple of Wudang be knocked down in one hit? He hadn't even pulled his sword from its sheath. The winner was already decided. At the pouring cheers, Chongmyung's face twitched. This is quite tasty. This was why people sought fame. Chongmyung, who felt it, waved his hand once again. And behind Chongmyung, Jinsung jumped up. And without realizing, Chongmyung kept touching his opponent's head. Isn't he hurt? He definitely heard the sound of something breaking, but he could feel nothing on his opponent's head. Jinsung looked at Chongmyung with eyes full of shock. Disciple Chongmyung, Manhua's divine dragon, and the starter of Manhua. Except for that, there weren't many good things that could be said about him. Yet strangely, Mujin and Ho Sanjo, who had clashed with him, had never spoken badly about Chongmyung. No wonder. Jinsung seemed to know the reason. This spar ends with the victory of Manhua's Chongmyung. And with that declaration, Chongmyung left the stage. Ah! Disciple Chongmyung! Wei Soheng shouted at the top of his voice. Of course, his voice was drowned out by the cheers of the crowds, but he still did it. Disciple Chongmyung! Ha ha ha! It is Disciple Chongmyung! It was at that moment Chongmyung, who was getting down, suddenly turned to the audience. Huh? And his eyes met with Wei Soheng. No, he can't hear me from here. Even if he could hear, locating where the voice came from was. But then, Chongmyung waved his hand with a happy face. Did he see me? And he jumped down the stage and went into the crowd. Surprised, the crowd cheered and reached for Chongmyung. Chongmyung would lightly shake hands and walk until the Hwayoung party was reached. Oh my! Gate leader! When did you get here? When Chongmyung shouted warmly, Wei Li-san smiled. We are so welcomed here. Looking at Chongmyung with a smile on his face, he felt genuinely happy. Wei Li-san wasn't stupid. Just by looking at the cheers pouring in, it was impossible to not see how different the status of Manhua was from the past. Still, didn't Chongmyung greet him with the same face as before? He is someone who is nothing like a Taoist. But in some ways, he was exactly like one too. When I heard that Manhua was participating, I ran over with my disciples. Thank you! Chongmyung grabbed Wei Li-san's hand. It couldn't have been easy to get here. Seeing disciple Chongmyung win, it seems like all the hardships have been blown away. Right? With a bashful smile, Chongmyung glanced into Wei Li-san's eyes. But by any chance? Chongmyung licked his lips, and Wei Li-san glanced around and whispered softly, 10 bottles. Kya! As if moved, Chongmyung dragged with his hands. Over there is a place for those who come from Manhua. We are part of the... It's fine. There are many seats left. No, that is the rule. The rules? Throw them out. We're going to use our place. How is that their problem? Don't worry, because if people come to argue, I'll turn their hairy hides into shiny ones. Wei Li-san shook his head. He really hasn't changed. When a person gains fame and status, they change, and they tend to be careful about their words and actions. However, Chongmyung, despite acquiring such a reputation, hadn't changed at all. No, in some ways, he was turning worse rather than better. This isn't necessarily a good thing. It couldn't be denied that he was a terrific person. At that time, Wei Soheng said, Disciple Chongmyung. Chongmyung looked at him and grinned. Did you see me? Yes, so strong. Wei Soheng admired him with longing eyes, and Chongmyung just shrugged. It isn't that I'm strong, but they're weak. Really? No, maybe I am strong. Chongmyung smiled and dragged the two. Come on, this way. Chongmyung held the two and swept them through the crowd and headed to the side. All the disciples followed them. "Elder! Elder!" Chongmyung began to shout as he crossed out of the crowded place. "The gate leader from Hwayong Gate arrived." Hwayong Gate? Oh! As soon as Baekchun and the others who knew the gate heard it, they jumped up. "Gate leader, it is so nice to see you after this long. How have you been?" Wei Li-san, who was about to respond with a soft smile, flinched and stepped back without realizing it. What? Didn't he say this was where Mount Hua was? Seems right. The black robe and plum blossom on their chests showed they were disciples of Mount Hua. No, but Mount Hua. It didn't seem like it. But there was Yoonjung, Jogul, and Baekchun. They looked slightly more mature from before, but they hadn't changed from what he knew. However, the others around them looked unusual. "Soheng, huh? When you went to Mount Hua, was it like this?" No, it wasn't like this at all. It had been less than a year since Wei Soheng visited Mount Hua. So what had happened in less than a year that turned them into this? Elder! Huh? We have guests! Guests? What kind of guests can Mount Hua have? A big bandit, no, a man, walked in front of them. It is just a man with a goatee that looks like he could come from any bandit group. It was quite wrong to criticize an elder of the main sect like this, but he fits so well into that situation. An elder? Were any Mount Hua elders this young? Who? Gate leader of Hwayong. Hwayong Gate. At that moment, the man's face, which seemed stiff, turned benevolent, like he had a halo behind his head. What? The elder, Hyunyoung, ran forward and grabbed his hand. Hwayong Gate leader! I am Wei Li-san, the gate leader of Hwayong. Right. You are already this well grown. I'm Hyunyoung. Elder Hyunyoung. Yes. Hyunyoung, who was about to stroke the head of Wei Li-san, looked around and tapped his shoulder. Welcome. I forgot that we should have stopped by Hwayong once on our way. We were a bit rushed. Hyunyoung kept rubbing his shoulder with a smile. One gesture and one smile, all filled with joy. But, are you really Elder Hyunyoung? Right. Didn't you see me when you visited Mount Hua when you were young? You seem too young. A good thing happened. Right, along. Hyunyoung, who was about to say something, turned back and said, What are you all doing, you idiots? If we have guests, shouldn't you bring chairs for them? What are you, people who don't have manners? No, people from our sect came and you're not giving them the seat. Get up, right now. Wei Li-san's eyes widened. Isn't that too harsh? However, the reaction of the disciples was a bit too weird. Chair, hurry up, move you people. They picked up chairs from elsewhere or gave the chairs they were sitting on and ran wide-eyed to place the chairs in front of the new arrivals. Sit comfortably. We can stand and watch. Please, don't mind. Wei Li-san was too flustered and Hyunyoung nodded as if this was natural. That's that. Chongmyung, are you fine? You should put another chair ahead and lie down. I was going to do that. Right, you bastard. This was a bit weird, too. Hyunyoung smiled and suggested a seat to Wei Li-san. Sect leader is currently somewhere else, so we will probably meet in the evening. I will, elder. I don't know what to do with such hospitality. At that moment, Hyunyoung grabbed his hand again. Hwayong Gate leader. Mount Hua is well aware of how much you have given us, so please do not feel uncomfortable and stay in peace. Elder. Wei Li-san's eyes flashed with emotions. Seeing the tightly held hand, his emotions flooded in. At that time, Hyunyoung opened his mouth with a bit of a puzzled face. But, And he said, a bit shakily, I couldn't confirm as I came here before it. No, did you send money to Mount Hua? I sent it before I started coming here. Ah, yes. Please rest in peace. In peace. It was Wei Li-san who thought that Mount Hua had something terribly wrong happening within it.